Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Coffee in the Corral. Look who you get to see today. Jennifer is here as my guest, my woman, my dream come true. All right, enough of that. I don't know, maybe not enough. Jen's like, yeah, say more. Welcome back to Coffee in the Corral. Actually, not. Psych. We have tea today. Because I'm recording this on a Sunday, it's in the afternoon, and I've already had 3 cups of coffee, and oopsies. I'm putting my phone in my pocket because I'm used to having a headset on, and I can't wear it when I'm interviewing somebody else. So here we are. We're just gonna, it's gonna be very laid back. Okay, prepare yourself.
So it's tea in the corral because we drank our coffee before we decided to do this today.
Right, and nobody wants to hear Abigail with 3 cups of coffee. So welcome to Tea in the Corral. Behind us, if you're watching the YouTube version of this, you're going to see Sky and Fiona and Zelenka eating hay happily. They are so happy. It's a really pretty day out here. The sun is shining. We're hiding kind of on the side of the barn because of the wind, but yeah, it feels great if the wind's not blowing on you. So I don't know if you can see in the camera, but I have one boot on and one boot off. And I've got this really bad ingrown toenail. This is probably TMI, but it's been hurting me so bad. And it woke me up in the middle of the night. I was awake for an hour, and I worked on it yesterday, and then Nate worked on it today, and it was so painful. And I had to take my boot off because the pressure on my toes is killing me. So anyways, you know, sometimes life is so fucking inconvenient.
Yes.
And earlier, like after Nate worked on it, and he put some really, it's called comfrey powder. It's a herb that's really good for healing wounds and stuff. But he packed that in, and the thing is, like on open wounds, it burns really bad.
It feels like fire.
Yeah, Jennifer knows this because she tried to cut her hand off when she was cutting open an avocado. What, like a month ago?
It was over a month ago now. It took like a month for it to heal because I stabbed it.
She stabbed so deep into her finger that, yeah, it was really deep. So it had healed from the inside out. But she packed it with comfrey, and it burned like fire, but it healed beautifully. So Nate put some on my toe, and it burned like fire. And so I cried. But I was crying because of the pain, half. And the other 50% was because I was so angry that, like, I've got a speaking engagement coming up this week in 2 days. And it's like today I was trying to decide, do I go to the doctor and just like have them do surgery on my toe, or do I do it on myself? Just none of the choices felt good. And it's like this pressure down to the line. And I don't want to, like, you know, this is my first really big speaking engagement. I'm really excited about it. But
you don't want to wobble
yeah,
up on the stage.
I don't want to hop on one foot or like have Jennifer push me up in a wheelchair. You know, it just, I feel like it wouldn't be as powerful. I don't know.
Maybe a little bit too dramatic in the wrong way.
In the wrong way, yeah. It'd get their attention, but they'd all be feeling sorry. So, anyways, that was kind of my start for the day. It was not really fun, but we're not here to talk about my toe. Surprise! And I know you're all like, oh man, but I wanted to have a conversation with Jennifer today because I've been wanting to talk about boundaries. It's been on, like, I've got this list of things that I want to talk about on my podcast. And that's one of them because it is, I feel like it's almost a buzzword these days. Like, you hear that more often, which is good in a way because I never grew up hearing the word boundaries, ever. Like, never. So I feel like it's good that we are more aware of that, but there's also like, okay, so boundaries feels like this like huge thing, but like how does that really, what's the shakedown of it? And it is so important and imperative to being able to live a life, I feel like, that is honoring to yourself. Is you have to have boundaries. But at the same time, it's also this almost like, well, what does that look like for me? How do I do that? So I'm a very practical person. So if somebody was to say like, hey, you know, you need to really think about having some firm boundaries and implementing those in your life. I'd be like, that's all nice, but like, what do you mean? And how do I do that? So I thought I would talk with Jennifer today because she's been really working hard in the past year to, you know, maybe she did hear the word boundaries growing up. I don't know. Did you? Was that something that you
The first time I remember hearing the word boundaries is when my parents got divorced and my mom was reading all these self-help books and one of them was Boundaries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is the ever popular Boundaries book that people still refer to today.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and she told me that that next to the Bible, that was the most influential book for her
Wow.
in that season. Yeah, but we didn't have like a whole big. I didn't do a lot of self, like learning and exploration then,
yeah.
because I was just in my early teens and I was just like, oh, good job, Mom.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
moved on with my teenage life. So
Interesting. So like that was your first, but you didn't, like you said, you didn't learn about it. You didn't really.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just remember hearing that because that's what the book was called.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's so interesting. So, one thing I feel like, that I try to be careful of, and that I also, when talking to other people, and that I want to be careful on this podcast about, is like, there is no book that I believe, I don't know, maybe some of you do, like your mom, like that's beside the Bible. But I don't believe there's any book that can really lay out how you should live your life and what boundaries you should implement. I really feel like it comes down to each person individually, and, we all get to choose. And so what might be boundaries for somebody else, and really important boundaries for them to have, another person can totally be okay with those things, and it doesn't make either one right or wrong.
Right.
It just makes everybody different. And so I might have strong boundaries in one area that you may not have, but that doesn't mean either, it doesn't change.
Right.
It, different experiences, I believe, are what shape us into figuring out the boundaries that we need to protect ourself, our peace, our sanity in our life.
For sure.
So, the kitty's trying to drink my tea. Hello, kitty. This is, I forgot the name.
Fiona.
Fiona. This is my daughter's cat. Hello, Fiona. The wild child.
Wild child.
Like her mother.
Yes. It's true.
The horses have a lot to say.
They agree.
They're very happy. They're very contented. That's their contented sound. So maybe we can just talk a little bit about our experiences, some of the boundaries that we've put into place, why they have been important to us. So I'll start with you.
Thank you.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Okay, thank you. So, you heard about boundaries when you were a young teenager, then you didn't really know anything else about it. Later on into your adult life, before maybe the last few years, did you learn about boundaries? And if you did, what did they mean to you then versus what do they mean to you now?
I did. I mean, I kind of knew about boundaries, and I would occasionally set boundaries with people if I felt confident that they would receive them. That was kind of one of the big deciding factors for me, because there were a lot of moments where I would think like, man, I wish I didn't have to do this, or I wish I could just say no, you know, but I had a really hard time with setting boundaries, to the point where I really didn't really consider it, because for some reason setting boundaries didn't feel like love unless it was in, I know what the deciding factor was.
Okay.
If it was setting a boundary with somebody because it was good for them, I could do that.
Okay, you had no trouble with that.
Right.
Okay.
But if I was setting a boundary because it was good for me, that was a lot more difficult.
Because it might make them upset.
Yeah, to the point where I didn't really even consider setting those boundaries. In the last couple of years, though, as I've been digging into that more, I've realized that I did not expect people to value me as a person and as a person in their life enough that they would receive my boundaries and respect those and continue to have a relationship with me. So for me, boundary setting, there was something in my head that told me boundary setting equals loss.
Okay.
And I did have that confirmed on a number of occasions, so that did not help me grow past that. You know,
Sure.
so there were a couple of It was more on a work level, but my work has always been very personal to me.
Right. It's been your passion,
You
right?
know, and I deeply care about people. So if I do set a boundary and practice caring for myself and that doesn't go well, that makes it even harder in the future.
Yeah.
You know, so there were a couple of times where I set some pretty strong boundaries, and those people just did not respect those and just said goodbye and walked away, basically.
Yeah.
You know, and so then setting those boundaries in my personal life was even scarier.
Sure.
Especially with my attachment style and things like that. I've always been fearful of losing what is most significant to me.
Yeah.
And so setting boundaries, I did really the opposite, which was I didn't have boundaries. You know, and I would do anything for anybody that I really, really loved.
Yeah.
Because I wanted them to feel the depth of my love for them.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to continue to feel like a fulfilling relationship for me.
So really, as far as caring for yourself, setting boundaries in a way for yourself, that wasn't something that you felt like you could do, because when you had done it a few times, it resulted in a lot of loss and pain. Okay.
Yeah. The greater need was feeling like I mattered and feeling like I was loved and like I was significant. And so I felt like it was like a choice between the two. You couldn't have both.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it came to setting boundaries for other people and protecting other people, right? That was like, oh, that's not even a question. You would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think even you and I, when we first met each other, I remember one time telling you, like, you don't have to keep saying that. I remember. I know. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And it wasn't hard for me because it was for you as well as for me.
I see.
You know, so that was different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I think probably a lot of us deal with this, this type of mindset is that it is so, the people that we love, it's really easy for us to take care of, to bend over backwards for, to do all the things that everything that we can do within our power. But to care for ourselves feels really selfish. It feels really horrible. It feels dangerous. In your way, feels like loss.
Right. And I'd experienced a lot of loss. And so it felt extra scary.
Well, and like you said, you mentioned like you didn't feel valuable enough to be able to say, hey, that people wouldn't value you. So like if you did, that you would they'd say, oh, well then,
like, oh, well, never
fuck
mind.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one conversation that we had.
It's a long
time ago, where you came to my place and we sat down by my pond, and you were like saying you're sorry about a situation. You felt like it was all your fault. And you basically were like, if you never want to be my friend again, I totally get it. Like, I understand. I'm really sorry. And I just sat there and I was like, and you had talked to some of your family and they had told you this is all your fault. You're a terrible person, basically.
That's what I received from it.
Yeah. That was
what
your
it felt
takeaway.
like to me.
Yes. Yeah. So you came here basically to say it's all my fault. I'm a terrible person. And I understand if you never want to be my friend again. And I sat there and I thought for a little bit, I could see why people would say that if you're looking at things from a religious point of view, but I knew you just as a person. And I was like, this is my opportunity to stop thinking this way, to stop thinking that, unless you can be this kind of person and fill in these boxes and be all holy and all this stuff, it's like, you're a terrible person. And I remember thinking, but it doesn't match up with the person I knew you to be. I was like, I just can't believe that. I refuse to believe that. And I think that was a defining moment for you, because you were pretty much thought I was going to dump you.
Right. I was caught totally off guard. Do you remember my reaction?
Yeah.
I just turned into a puddle of tears because I was caught totally off guard. I drove down here to basically let you tell me that I really am as terrible of a friend as I thought I was, and that you were just going to move on.
Yeah.
So for you to choose me in that sense, to choose to love me and value me and pour into our relationship, even just as friends, was just very odd for me, because it was the total opposite of what I expected in that moment, but what I always expected also.
Right. Yeah. And, I think that was defining for me in a way of like, it was the first time I had just like stood back and be like, well, what do I think? Like if I just take away all of this programming in my brain, this religious programming, like what do I know to be true? What do I think? And I was like, fuck, I don't believe any of that. Like, I just can't. You know, I know you, and I know you enough that you're not, I will never believe you're a terrible person. And you were valuable to me. So it's not like, you know, I think you're perfect and none of us have any problems or you know, challenges, things that we need to work on. But I was like, what, girl, you're way too valuable. We're not done. We're not even, you know, like, anyways, yeah. So in this past year, you've had to learn to value yourself in a way that you have been able to started being more clear with your family, more clear with your friends, your past acquaintances. I know it's been really hard. I've kind of watched you try to navigate your way through those very rough waters and some with some relationships. And I don't know, how are you feeling about it all? What are some of your thoughts?